Hey, this is Adam Torres, and I'm here to tell you that it has never been easier to start your very own podcast. At Mission Matters, our goal is to amplify stories that matter. That means we want to help you start your podcast because your story matters. We can do this in 3 different ways. 1, join our podcast school and take a free or paid course. 2, visit our resources page where we've already figured out what you need, such as where to host your podcast. Or 3, heck, we can even do everything for you through our podcast agency, including editing for cheaper than you can do in-house. Oh, and no contract, service is month to month. Get started by heading over to missionmatters.com and click on Start a Podcast. All right, now let's get into the show. Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of the Mission Matters Business Podcast, your source for all things business. My name is Adam Torres. You can follow me on Instagram at @AdamTorres. Keep up with my book releases, book tour schedule, signings, all that other good stuff. Always love to connect with you there. And as always, if you'd like to apply to become a co-author of one of my upcoming books, just head on over to the website, missionmatters.com, and click on Become an Author to apply. All right, so today I have Ron Coury on the line, and he's author of the recently released book, Tenacity, A Vegas Businessman Survives Brooklyn, the Marines, Corruption, and Cancer to Achieve the American Dream, a true life story. Ron, welcome to the show.
Hi, Adam. Thank you for having me today.
So, Ron, I'm excited to get into this book. First off, I saw some of what it's about, and this is, you got a lot going on here. You've had a really interesting life, which you talk a lot about in the book, and we're going to go through that. But before we do that, just give the audience a little bit of a flavor of your background. Tell us a little bit more about how you got started in your career, please.
Sure. Well, at the age of 19, I was growing up in Brooklyn, New York. I enlisted in the Marine Corps in 1972. After 2 years of active duty, I was relocated to California. My last duty station was the Marine Corps Supply Center in Barstow, and that is only a 2-hour drive from Las Vegas. So I would drive to Las Vegas on weekends, and when I was done with my active duty term, I decided to relocate to Las Vegas before heading back to New York and try to find my fortune. At the time, Las Vegas was a very small town, under 200,000 residents, and I came to town and started my career as a casino dealer. And after 5 years of dealing at the Tropicana Hotel, during which I learned all the live games, baccarat, craps, blackjack, and roulette, I ended up being a realtor, a dealer, and in 1979 invested in my first small business, which was a small locals tavern. Over the course of 40 years, I ended up growing to 4 neighborhood casinos, which were also taverns and restaurants, and went into over a dozen other businesses unrelated to the tavern industry, which my book, Tenacity, walks people through what I think is somewhat entertaining, will serve as motivational and inspirational with some of the business challenges I encountered.
Wow, what an amazing story, first off. And I'm glad that you put it all in the book, because I feel like stories like this often go untold, just because, people don't encapsulate, they don't get that book done. So I know it's not an easy thing to complete a book. First off, congrats on the book. How you feeling now that it's out and everything's going?
It's quite a rewarding feeling to conceptualize telling one's life story in a book, and to actually have it come to fruition. In my case, when I got done telling my story, the people I hired that were just quicker on a keyboard than I was, so I ended up dictating 36 hours of my life. It ended up as a 600-page narrative. And the book consultants I retained told me that a typical book is just under 300 pages. So I, with their help, took out some and left in some of the most interesting high points, which in my audiobook, which, by the way, was read by actor Michael Madsen from Reservoir Dogs and Donnie Brasco, ended up being about a 6-hour audio. and to get it done, which took 2 years to make it from the first audio meeting we had where I just dictated my story until it was actually a book on Amazon. It actually took 2 years. And I didn't start the book writing effort until I sold all my businesses, which at the end of 2015 ended up being 3 new car dealerships in Southern Nevada and 3 in California. By then, I had already sold my taverns, limousine company, and other businesses. And I had to decide what I wanted to be, who I was going to be in my retirement years. And I found that retirement wasn't in my future. I was bored. I had a sense of irrelevance, and I needed to decide what to do next. And writing a book ended up being what I pursued. And between 2016 and 2019, making my story an actual book and publishing it was a business project in and of itself.
Wow, what a story and what a journey, and I'm excited to get into this book. So first off, I know there's a lot of things, there's a lot of takeaways. There's only so much that we can, cover in a 15 to 20 minute, podcast episode, but my listeners are readers, and 2 things. Number one, they know that my longtime listeners, they know I love helping authors sell books, number one, but number 2, they know I love bringing great projects to them. So what are some of those key things that you want, and I know there's plenty of them, but what are some of those key things that you want the readers of this book to really get out of it?
Well, if your listeners are a lot of readers and they enjoy the entrepreneurial concept, one of the high points of my book, I guess the best way I could describe it, is envisioning starting a new business only to find that the city you were opening it in had a councilman who would be a regulator for your business licensing and ended up being a competitor not only in the tavern business, but also in the screen printing gaming supply business I was in, and would use his power as a councilman to do away with me as a competitor, which sounds remarkable.
Yeah, let's not glance over that, because you go into, and I love the book because you go into this stuff, like you're not glancing over this, so you actually go into how these things transpire. So it's not your average business book. Let's throw it out there that way.
Yeah. This in my case, this councilman, it's an adjoining city to Las Vegas, which in my book I name it Opportunity, Nevada. But anyone who knows Southern Nevada knows the name of the 3 cities that surround Las Vegas. So in one of the adjoining cities, I endeavor to develop a neighborhood casino there because as a smaller city than Las Vegas, it had not yet grown to the point that they required a 200-room hotel for you to engage in unlimited gaming. So it made perfect sense for me to buy a piece of property in this adjoining city and go for my tavern, restaurant, and unlimited gaming license. In this town, it's called non-restricted gaming, but that's why I went outside of Las Vegas for this one venture. Well, unbeknownst to me at the time, and after I had committed over $250,000 to a piece of property to develop on, I find this councilman, besides being a full-time city councilman, was also in the screen printing business, and my company, Suburban Graphics, had grown to 120 employees from what I started with 4 employees. We had worldwide gaming sales with the growth of gaming throughout the world in the 1980s, and we were doing over $12 million a year in sales. Well, this councilman was in the same business, while he also had plans on the drawing board for 3 neighborhood casinos in his city. So because of my growth and I guess a fear of legitimate competition, he used his power as a councilman and his small town police department to try to frame me with felony charges on a totally unrelated matter. And my book takes your readers and listeners through what it was like to be framed on charges, the creative and innovative ways I engaged to clear my good name, and how I developed some good old-fashioned Western-style justice for the councilman that tried to screw me.
Man, this sounds, you know what this sounds like, Ron? It sounds like a movie. When's the movie coming out next? This is good.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because after my book came out, I was contacted by the owner of a New York City-based production company who told me in a phone call he was on vacation in Miami, he was reading my book on the beach, and when he got done with it, found me and asked if I would consider a made-for-TV movie, which was his genre. He said, we don't do big screen adaptations, but we do made-for-TV movies, and I would love to make a movie based on a street guy in Brooklyn joining the military and then going into business for himself and encountering some of the things your book took me through. And I told him I'd be happy to, and we were going to meet in New York in the first quarter of 2020 to pursue making a movie of my story. And then the COVID virus hit and sort of put everything on hold. I personally didn't want to fly anywhere, and he closed his New York office until the virus concerns passed, and he's working from his home in New Jersey right now. We talk on the phone frequently, and I intend to pursue this when life in our post-COVID virus world gets back to normal and continues. But interesting you say that, because I do have movie interest, and I am looking forward to seeing it become a movie.
Yeah, no, I called it, and the storyline that you just said, like, it just makes sense. Like, as soon as you said it, and the thing is it's so clear, it's so, like, straightforward, and the best part is it's real, and you live this stuff, so I could just imagine the flavor that could be brought to this overall versus, you know, some of the other stories that are told. I think it's really cool concept, and I think it's great what you're doing, and I think it's also awesome that you put this into a book for us now, so that readers and listeners on your audio book can also, you know, benefit from your knowledge and from some of the things that you've learned as a businessman through the years, not just with the councilman, but just, you know, in building a business. Because when you came from, you know, out of the Marines, my guess is you didn't really have that business background. Like, you were starting to learn from scratch. Am I right, or am I off, or?
Oh, you're exactly right. OJT is the term used in the 70s and 80s, on-the-job training. I wanted to go into a business. I didn't want to be a casino dealer for the rest of my life, and I needed to find a business that someone who didn't stay in college, didn't have a degree, I couldn't just become an architect or an attorney or a doctor, trying to find a business that I thought I could operate. Thankfully for the training in the Marine Corps, getting into the tavern business in the late 70s and early 80s, back before drinking and driving awareness had people much more conscious about only having 2 or 3 cocktails when they went out. Back then, if you had too many to drink and a cop pulled you over, they'd call you a cab or give you a ride home. It's a lot different today. But back then, you actually were in the drinking business, and you needed to be able to handle yourself to run a tavern and run unruly customers out the door and take care of business. And my book goes into some of that kind of experience as well. And that's why I say it's not preachy. It doesn't bore people with me, my business, my various experiences. But it's pretty entertaining, taking someone through what it's like to pick a business and pick something that you think you can do and learn on the job as you go. And that's exactly what I did. And then beyond the 4 neighborhood casinos I developed, going into the limousine business, being threatened by competitors with death if I dared to pursue the business that they felt they had a monopoly in, and how I overcame that challenge and got them to back off and not make anonymous threats to my home phone and scare my family. My book also has a whole chapter dedicated to identifying the person I thought was doing this and how I used some of the skills I was trained with to physically persuade them to stop doing such a thing. And that's why I say the book is not only motivational and it helped to inspire people who want to pursue their dreams, but it is a bit entertaining as well.
No, that's awesome, Ron. So that being said, if somebody is listening to this right now and want to pick up a copy of the book or the audio version, or they just want to connect with your brand overall and the work that you're doing, what's the best way for people to do that?
There's two routes they could take. They could go right to Amazon and enter under books Tenacity by Ron Coury, Coury, or there is a very elaborate website I've invested in that is entitled roncouryauthor.com, and it gives them a little more perspective into what my book's about. There's over 100 photographs in the photo gallery, and they could peruse the website, from which they could do a quick link right there and go to Amazon, where it's available as a paperback, hardcover, Kindle, or, as I said earlier, the audio, which on Amazon is called Audible version, and my book is read by actor Michael Madsen.
Fantastic. Well, Ron, and by the way, that is a great site. So roncouryauthor.com, really easy to find, and check out the site. It gives you a whole background of really great done site. So, Ron, appreciate you coming on the show today and sharing more about your background, and congrats again on the book. So everybody going on Amazon, it was really easy to find. It's called Tenacity, a Vegas businessman survives Brooklyn, the Marines, corruption, and cancer to achieve the American dream. A true life story, and what a story it is. Looking forward to watching that movie too. So to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. If you're a first-time listener, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Love to have you back to listen some more. And if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, Mission Matters Business, leave us some comments in the video. Love to know what kind of projects and things that you're working on. And Ron, thanks again for coming on the show.
Great meeting you, Adam. I appreciate this opportunity.